all respective stores, iOS and Android. Got it on my Android. ZingoTV is also available on Roku, Roku Sticks, Amazon Fire Stick, Google Chromecast, and all 2016 smart TVs going forward. It's free, so download it today. Folks, how we doing out there? This is, as always, the Sports Den. My name is Scott Churchson. Alongside me today is my far better co-host, Mr. Rob Stats. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back. A lot of fun things to talk about today.
Oh, boy, do we ever. And alongside us as well is the also far better, in this case, guest host, Mr. Michael Ventola. Welcome back, sir. How you doing?
Doing great. Glad that you guys had me back on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good show. We have a lot to discuss today. Oh, my Nelly. So we're going to go into a lot of stuff here. Want to talk NBA draft. We're going to be talking Joe Burrow and the heartbreak of that. Whatever Tom Brady called last night, which I think was more or less okay. We'll get into that. If we have time, I want to talk a little bit of Tony Romo, but I do want to spend some time today talking about Tyson Jones coming this weekend. I'm really excited to see what ends up happening with that. But as always, you can find us on Twitter at BB Sports Den and on Facebook at Barnburner Sports Den. So as always, drop us your questions, give us your thoughts, ideas, and comments. So let's start this off. Cincinnati Bengals had a franchise quarterback in the making, and now he is out with an ACL and MCL tear. This is unbridled heartbreak to a team that deserves better than it got. It is something that, even as somebody whose team is playing against the Bengals next week, I didn't want to see that end up happening. So let's start this off. Mike, let's start us off with you. Give me your thoughts on this. Give me your take on this. Where does this team go from here?
Well, first of all, it is just absolutely detrimental what happened to Joe Burrow. I mean, such a promising year, especially because Cincinnati, even though that they've had their struggles all season long, but you kind of saw that this guy has the makings of being a really good NFL quarterback. But obviously, there's so much that this team has to still work on getting depth in other areas. But at least gave Bengals fans this year to kind of look and say, hey, we got potentially our guy that's going to, give us a franchise quarterback for at least the next, 10 years, hopefully. But then this unfortunate injury, ACL, MCL injury, I felt so bad. I was watching Red Zone and they replayed the injury, and my jaw dropped. I'm like, this kid's done. This kid's done for the year. It was just so sad. And, now for Cincinnati, I mean, now they're going to have to roll out with Ryan Finley for now. And, and it stinks because if you're head coach Zach Taylor, I mean, you're trying to, tie yourself to Joe Burrow, showing that, hey, I'm still a young coach. I'm still the right guy for this operation. But, now it's going to be interesting to see what Cincinnati does moving forward. How does he bounce back from this injury? Will he even be eligible to play at some point next season? So what does that mean for the Bengals doing the draft? It's going to be very interesting. So I think they're going to wait to see, what more on his long term before they were maybe to go QB in the first round. I don't think they'd go that far, but they definitely could be in the hunt for a veteran quarterback going into next year.
Rob?
Yeah, it was bad. I felt bad because I had just done that article too on him and Tua being top 5. They both lost this week, and the number 6 guy, Justin
Where was
Herbert,
that article, by the way, if we want to read it?
On barnburner.net. Barnburner.ca.
Nice drop.
Barnburner.ca.
Very subtle drop there.
It was so reminiscent of the Carson Palmer injury from a couple of years back too. Same, like almost in the in the end zone, like same part of the field, same exact thing, like stepping into a throw and somebody just falling into him. But like I said in the article, one thing about him all year has been his toughness. And when I saw it on the replay or like the highlights, I'm like, he was just like, yeah, I tore my ACL. Like he looked so calm. Like he knew what was going on, but that's the type of person he is to me, is like, he's got that mentality of, okay, like now I go back, now I go rehab and now I come back better next year. Like that's his mindset. That's how he's been through his college career. I think that's going to be how he is through his pro career. But yeah, you feel bad for Cincinnati. I mean, they go through so many quarterbacks, so many injuries and things. And he was playing, given the circumstances, like he doesn't have a great line. He didn't have Joe Mixon, but he was doing things. Like they were 2-6-1, I think, going, they had the tie against Philly and they've been competitive. So yeah, you feel bad for them. You want to see the franchise turn it around. I think him and Dak, I mean, the two guys with horrible injuries this year, I think they're both going to bounce back very well. And like Mike said there, they'll be in the market if it looks like he's going to be out longer than the start of next season. They'll definitely go shopping, maybe for like another Andy Dalton or Cam or so, maybe Fitzmagic if he decides he wants to opt out of Miami after what's going on down there. So, but just bring somebody in for the first couple of games to carry them through till Burrow can come back.
Yeah, I mean, it is entirely possible. I think, given the way it happened, he could be available for week 1 next year. I mean, the numbers that he had, it's going to take him some time, I think, to get back into playing shape. It'll probably be, even if he started game 1 next year, it's going to be probably week 2 or 3 before he's actually going to be really able to be ready, I think. But he had an 89.8 passer rating in his rookie year in 10 games, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 65% completion percentage. That actually is towards the top, right around the top 10 of the league. And to see that out of a rookie, everybody in Cincinnati had hope for the future. And of course, since in their case, it's probably like Cincinnati's out of Cincinnati. And the poor, like I said, the poor Bengals fans who needed something to get excited about had it and suddenly lost it.
And like I said, they're not playing in a soft division either. They've got Pittsburgh, they've got Baltimore, Cleveland's a tough team for them. So it's to have that statistic, especially a passer rating in that division where you have to play those teams more than once. And the other teams they've played, like it's impressive. Like it's like, okay, yeah, he's top 10, but it's like he's top 10 on a team that had the #1 draft pick last year and doesn't have, they're not a very well-rounded offense. Like they have talent, like in the receiver position. Their running backs are good when they're healthy, but again, it's that O-line and just not have, and their defense is probably a little suspect too. They force him to they give up a lot of points and he has to throw the ball more than they would probably like.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening in this case. They're playing for draft picks at this point too. The only competition that they really have is the Jets, who I had predicted were going to win this week. And of course I look really embarrassed on that one. I looked embarrassed on a lot of my picks. I'm really ashamed by that one. But it's going to be curious to see what these guys do, but in this case, I talked about this at the beginning, about 10 minutes ago, speaking of quarterbacks, I've been looking at the stats on Tom Brady. I mean, I don't know if you guys happen to see that game last night, but those picks were ugly. I mean, these are some things that it's almost like, was it an injury that had happened that he wasn't talking about? Was it, it's something where he was just bad with these passes. These are very un-Brady-like things. And looking at the last 3 games that he's had, his numbers going into the first 9 games of the season, he had a quarterback rating of 103, 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Last 3 games, 5 touchdowns, 5 picks, and a 75 rating. He had 3 interceptions and no touchdowns 2 weeks ago and 2 interceptions last night. Is he in danger? Should Tampa Bay be worried here?
I don't think yet, just because, look, Tom Brady is still, what he's doing at 43 years old is still amazing. I think what's the issue with Tampa Bay right now is, and I do think Byron Leftwich is a really good offensive coordinator. He's a young up-and-coming guy, and I think he's probably going to be a future head coach down the line, especially because, the trend is, these OCs are turning into head coaches. But right now what they're having you're seeing at times, even though Tampa Bay is still one of the better teams in the NFC, you're seeing philosophical differences right now, guys. Remember, when Tom operated for so long in 20 years in New England, they weren't the most vertical team in the world. Yes, they did get vertical when they had guys like Randy Moss, but as I say, guys like Randy Moss, because he really didn't have anybody outside of Randy Moss. When you look at elite receivers in his career, you could argue that what he has with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, that these may be 2 guys that can literally stretch the field as well as anyone he's ever had in his career. Tom's always done the short to intermediate type passes, every now and then hit the big play, likes the backs to be able to catch out of the backfield, and obviously having Gronk, the best tight end he's ever worked with. So I think you're kind of seeing that happen right now with Tom in Tampa Bay. And I think that Tom and once he and Bruce Arians, they continue to figure this stuff out, I think they're going to get over it. So I know that, 20 years, especially me being a Jet fan, I always think that Brady always figures it out, and he will. I just think, he hasn't shown signs of slowing down. Yes, he's not the guy he was 5 years ago, but he's still able to make a lot of the throws. I just think right now him and the coaches have to get on the same page of what they have to play truer to Tom's strengths rather than, I understand they have their philosophy, but I think if they can kind of get to where Tom was from his strength wise, they'll be able to get back to where they like to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think in this case, I had kind of predicted the team was going to go about 10-6 this season under him, which for Tampa Bay is a huge improvement. That team, that's a team that deserved to get wins. That's a team that deserved to get, back into the playoffs, because it had been a long time for that team as well. But I mean, I almost wonder if Antonio Brown could possibly be that vertical guy you talked about. That's part of the reason they brought him in. Very low risk, but I'm a little concerned at 43 years old. Is age starting to catch up with him given the last 3 games that he's had? Rob, you're nodding your head. Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. That's what my point was going to be, like, what's going on is that he's a 43-year-old quarterback in the NFL. Like, he just can't make those throws that he used to make. And like Mike said, he's traditionally been an intermediate to short passer where he'll make the big play. He'll go over the top when the safeties start to cheat down. He catches them with their pants down, basically. And yeah, last night, the throws last night, though, too, were like, they looked like somebody perfectly described them as punts. Like, he completely over. And I think that's the thing. He realizes that he's got to get the ball out sooner because he doesn't have as much arm strength. So he's got to put more air under it. And there's times where he's overthrowing his receivers because of coverage. So, yeah, I think, and like I said, they've always had the talent in the receivers with Evans and Godwin. And even before they got Gronk, they had Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard. So he's got the weapons. And Antonio Brown was a vertical guy when he was in Pittsburgh with Ben. Ben always went over the top to him. So they've got him returning kicks now just to get him touches. So we'll see how he plays out. If they can work him into the mix, start using him in the slot and other spots. The more he can touch the ball, as crazy as it sounds, I think the better Brady will be. And Brady's comfortable with him. You can see it when he plays. He likes going to him. He throws to him probably more than he throws to Godwin. So they brought these guys in for a reason. It's because Brady's comfortable with them. Everybody knows his history with Gronk, and he's obviously got some sort of connection in the short time he's known Brown and played with him, that he likes going to Brown.
But yeah, in this case, I think if they give him a few more touches, get him. Antonio Brown came in mid-season. It might still take another couple of games before he really gets solid, gets comfortable as far as playing in. But that was, even when it came out, that was a low risk move. They had nothing to lose by grabbing him and everything to gain in that case. But in this, again, he's 43 years old. Now, I didn't want to say this. I hate saying this. I feel uncomfortable saying it. But I am concerned. And next game, I think, is going to be very pivotal, because it's going to see about how he's going to be able to perform, because they're going up in this case. Okay. They're, then Sunday they're going up against the Giants. It's not that big of a deal, but it's going to be curious to see.
No, they got Kansas City this week.
Yeah, I was going to say, am I looking at the wrong? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong schedule. Good job, me. That didn't look right when I saw it. Oh dear God. Okay, no, they got Kansas City, which in this case, yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a test for him to be able to see what he's going to be able to do against that team. That game could very well end up being a 38-35 type of blowout or competition. There, it's going to be could be very high scoring game, and I'm curious to see what they're going to be able to do, because he needs a rebound game. He's had 2 games out of the last 3 that have been really, really rough on him. And this is the game that's going to determine where they're going to be seated in the playoffs. Even if they even make it, there's a chance they might not even be able to do that. But I don't know. Any other thoughts on this? Do you think he can beat Kansas City?
Going into next week, people don't realize this either, though. This is basically Patrick Mahomes has been waiting 2 years for this.
Oh, yeah.
Because he never got that rematch game from the AFC Championship, because Tennessee knocked them out beforehand. So, and like you said, he could easily – Brady could have a great game and lose, because Mahomes just plays better than him. And after watching Jared Goff dissect them last night, who I had Goff 2 weeks ago in fantasy, and he was like, I swear to God, McVay was the Bud Kilmer of my fantasy life, because Goff was throwing the ball from the 25 to the 10 up and down the field. And as soon as they got to the 10, he was like, okay, which running back's going to score a touchdown? And then last night I'm watching him throw for 3 touchdowns, and I'm like, that's all the points I needed last week. Thanks, McVay. Mahomes has been waiting for this revenge game in terms of, getting back at Brady and Gronk. They're both there. So this is going to be, I think, like you said, it's going to be like in the high 30s, maybe 40s. Like this, it's going to be like that Kansas City LA game in 2018 when I was in LA, and there was like a Monday night game, and the final score was like 49-42, and
I remember that.
Nobody punted till like the fourth quarter.
And that's actually what you really want from these two teams and these two quarterbacks in this case. But since you mentioned Goff, there was that little bit of an issue that happened where Tom Brady again didn't shake hands with the opposing quarterback. I get it from an emotional standpoint. This is a competitor who wears his heart on his sleeve, unlike probably anybody we've ever seen. You got to do it. You got to muscle through. You got to, even if you don't want to, even if your heart's on your sleeve there, you still got to do it anyway. It's the sign of respect. It's a sign of integrity. And he's hurting his own brand a little bit by not doing things like that, because social media is looking for reasons to come down on him. And that's another one.
Well, Miami fans have been on Kyler Murray since the Arizona-Miami game, because he did the same thing. But that same week, I forget who the Steelers played. It might have been the Cowboys. Ben didn't shake hands at the end of the game. Ben just, as soon as they won, Ben turned around and walked off the field. So I'm like, there is the 2020 COVID thing where you're like, hey, I'm out. And I think actually, Ben was that the week Ben went into like protocols or something like right after. So it's like, maybe Ben kind of knew something that nobody else knew at the time. But yeah, it's under regular circumstances. If they just turned around and walked off the field, it'd be like, yeah, okay. But then given the state of society that we're in with everything going on, it's like, hey, you don't want to shake hands? Like, okay. Like, I'll talk to you later. I'll hit you up on social media.
I'll send you a tweet. I'll tweet you later.
Yeah. Miami fans were freaking out over Kyler Murray. And I'm like, how about you guys just focus on your game this week, which they got spanked by Mike Houston's Denver Broncos.
Yes. I predicted Denver was going to win that one. Props to you, Mike Houston, and wherever you are. Mike was cool enough. It was a huge Broncos fan who was on a couple of weeks back. And yeah, he's a diehard. And I'm glad he got that win out of that. Sorry, Rob, that, you ended up losing this one. But I don't know. I mean, Mike, I think you can kind of understand this a little bit, but when you're seeing a team that loses firsthand, I mean, I remember when I was covering the XFL earlier this year, I was in the losing locker room for the LA Wildcats, and they lost a bad one to the New York Guardians on the road. And my boss was like, okay, go in and interview them. And going in and interviewing the losing team in the locker room is just, you see the raw emotion, anger, and hate. I mean, I watched a fight break out, and this is the kind of stuff that I think people don't really always see, because of the fact that they see, okay, they didn't shake hands, but they don't appreciate the emotional aspect of it. Again, I'm not justifying what Tom Brady did there, but I mean, I get it. You've probably seen it too. You see, basically something with the Iron Pigs. You see a pitcher blow it with a grand slam, and they lose by one. And you see the emotions in this case, and then you have to go up to him. It's like, so you just gave up a 98-mile-an-hour fastball dead down the middle of the plate, and you lost the game. How do you feel right now? Oh my God.
It's crazy. Like, I'll walk down to the clubhouse after games, and I'll be like, I'll be passing out box scores as well too. And you can hear a pin drop, at times, or people are chirping, hey, you should have made this pitch, whatever. But to go on with Brady, see, I think, I get it for Tom. He's so used to winning. He's won, six Super Bowls. The guy's always in the playoffs. I think what's to me is, and I respect him. I think he's the best quarterback in the last 25 years. The NFL hasn't seen a QB like this guy. But I think fans just want to see consistency. Like, okay, he'll go over and he'll, fist bump and talk to some QBs. I get he's a little closer to, but like Eagle fans are still chirping that he didn't say anything to Nick Foles. You know what I mean? Like, and there's still, you have the whole Nick Foles thing, or he didn't say nothing to Jared Goff. But, like for Brady, if he is worried about his brand, I don't think he is as much. But if I were him, I'd be like, just be consistent. If you're going to go talk to some QBs, talk to them all. Otherwise, if you're worried about COVID, and no one would think twice, like Rob said, tip of the cap, whatever, and head on in. You know what I mean? I think that's what it is at the end of the day. I think people just want to see him be a little consistent.
Yeah. I mean, I get it from that particular standpoint, but I don't know. I don't really think it's that big a deal. I think, again, it's just emotions on the sleeve kind of a thing. I think it's that possibly more than COVID. My opinion only. I could be wrong. Yeah. But again, people are looking for reasons, especially with social media being the way it is. They're looking for reasons to troll their, to hate the haters, as it were. And I can get into that conversation at a different time. But I like I don't know. I still think 10-6 for that team. I still think they'll win the first round of the playoffs, lose the second round of the playoffs, whoever they end up going up against. But sorry, Jared, I know that you had said that that team was going to go to the Super Bowl. Sorry, I don't see it. But I don't know. What do you? I mean, do you think they can still make the Super Bowl at this point, or do you think NFC Championship?
I think they can get as far as the NFC title game. I just think right now, I know even without Drew Brees, New Orleans still, to me, keep an eye on them. I'm kind of intrigued to see how more of this Taysom Hill is going to keep going. And then you look at I know Green Bay has been up and down, but you get Rodgers in the playoffs, and this to me is about a Green Bay team that, like I said, I know they've been a little down there, but the defense has been a little bit better. They can run the football, so there are some teams in the NFC that will certainly give Tampa Bay a run for their money. But I can still find way. Brady in the playoffs is still a different animal. So,
I think with Green Bay is, like I said, offensively they can hang with anybody as long as they stop fumbling the ball. And I think the team people are kind of writing off a little too early is Seattle. If that defense gets healthy, like you saw the difference when Russ finally had a running back to hand the ball off to, and he didn't have to throw the ball 60 times a game. He got Hyde back. And I felt so bad because I remember Bo Scarborough from when he was in Detroit like a year or two ago, and he came on at the end of the season. And I remember this thing, I'm like, just go get whatever running back is coming out of Alabama at this point. Like he was another Alabama running back, just hard-nosed downhill guy, takes the pressure off the pass game, and see Russ looked like Russ again for the first time in a couple of weeks. And that defense is going to start to get healthy again. Jamal Adams is back. They're going to start getting some other guys back. And if they can control sometimes their best defense is a good offense when they can control the ball. So they're going to keep them off the field a little bit more. And I think they're a team that can, easily make a run to the Super Bowl from the NFC side.
Never discount Russell Wilson ever. Yeah. That's just where it comes down to, And like you said, if they can get that defense going, staying consistent, I think I could absolutely see it. And actually, that was literally what I was going to say there. The Cardinals, I think, have potential also. I mean, I like where they're going. I think there's a great future there. I don't know. My pick right now would probably have to be Green Bay. It really does. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I would have said Drew Brees and the Saints if it hadn't been for that injury. But let me just say this: what was it? 5 cracked ribs, and like 5 cracked ribs, and a collapsed lung. And they're like, "Well, he's week to week right now." I mean, my God. I mean, it's Taysom Hill time. You can see he could be the heir apparent, to Brees here. But how tough do you have to have a collapsed lung and say, I'll be back at work next week?
I knew that injury was bad when they said he took himself out of the game.
Yes.
I was like, that's not good. Like he would never take himself out. But at first I was shocked that they went with Taysom Hill. I thought it was going to be Jameis Winston last week. But then we talked about this in another earlier episode. They invested in Taysom Hill. Like it's time to show that money is worth it. That it almost cost you Alvin Kamara and had all this drama in the beginning of the season. Like you spent all this money on a backup quarterback, and Sean Payton looks like a genius right now. Like he's got the Sean Payton quarterback school coming out of New Orleans with like, do you need to revive your career? Go to New Orleans. Do you need a good backup? Go to New Orleans.
Yeah.
And he just someone else made this great point a couple weeks ago. There's certain teams, and it's usually the successful teams, they adapt to what they have. And Sean Payton does that. It's like, okay, I don't have Drew Brees. I have Taysom Hill. Okay, what can I do with him that I couldn't do before? How can I work with him to keep winning games? And he makes the adjustments, whereas a lot of other teams kind of like, here's our strategy. Okay, who can do this? Like, I think that's a perfect case in point is the Jets. Like Adam Gase comes in and goes, here's what we're doing. It's like, dude, you don't have the pieces to fit that puzzle. Like none of it's going to work. You're trying to put square peg in round hole. Like match it up, work with what you got.
And that's why they're 0-10.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry, Mike. I really thought they were going to take that game. The creator of Barn Burner Network, Joe, I was on his show last week, and he was like, no, you're dead wrong. The Chargers are going to win. I'm like, no, the Jets are winning their first game. I was just hardcore. They're going to take this game in your face, Joe. You're not getting this one. And then, of course, they lost. So, yeah.
I thought they're embarrassing themselves the past couple of weeks. They're playing competitive. I'm proud of that. So.
Yeah. I had a feeling. I was like, they're going to score points because that's kind of San Diego's thing is they'll get up early, they'll give up points late, and they started fighting back. And it was funny. I was flipping channels between that and the Green Bay game, and I flipped back on, and I'm like, wait, how did they get 2 points? San Diego was at midfield, and I see this bizarre play of like the punter running, or I'm like, oh Lord. It's like Anthony Lynn. I'm like, boy, if you lose your job, I ain't gonna wonder why. Like, I think he's a guy. Like, this is the point of the year where I start looking at like who's not gonna have a job at the end of the year. And I think the Matt Patricia experiment in Detroit is going to end real soon.
Yeah.
I love Anthony Lynn. It's just the Chargers are another one of those like snake bitten teams. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's got to come down to coaching, like just bad clock management on his part all the time. I think he's a very good coach. I think he'd be a great coordinator. I think he's just like we've talked about before. He's one of those guys where it's like stick to coordinating, like head coaching may not be your forte, but I think he's another one. I wouldn't be surprised even if Herbert won them a bunch of games down the stretch that they make a change to try and bring somebody a little more offensive minded in, who's got a little bit more of a better pedigree. And obviously like it's clock management's been like his Achilles heel for the last couple, like in so many games in the past, like throwing it on third down. I'm like, dude, just run the clock out. Like,
well, it's also, you'd also wonder the fact that it's the Phillip Rivers effect with him no longer there. That's a huge adjustment. I mean, they've had 15 some odd years with him at quarterback. And now suddenly you don't have him anymore. Again, you were talking about this before. Can the coaching staff adjust to a new quarterback and a new system? Or are you too set in your ways to say, this is the way we're going to do it? We're going to try and find people that can fit that system.
Yeah, I think they've adjusted really well to Herbert, like especially that he got thrown into the fire that like week two or three against Kansas City, and he's just slinging it all over the field. Like he looks
he's having a great first year. Yeah.
Yeah, and another guy doing it without a run game for all intents and purposes. Like Balaj finally came around. They have someone to hand off to, but he hasn't had Eckler for weeks. Melvin Gordon went to Denver, so I can only imagine what they'll. And I understand that's probably part of the reason they have to throw the ball a lot late in the game as well, because it's just the only way for them to move the ball downfield. But in the offseason, they get him another, a quality running back in the draft or in free agency and bolster up that line. The AFC West will be wild next year. Like you'll legitimately have like 3 playoff, possibly 4, depending on where Denver falls in the mix. But San Diego can, like, they're a team, they can hang with anybody offensively. Like, and Vegas proved it again with the Chiefs this week. Like, you don't have to contain them. You just got to be able to throw the same amount of punches as them. And it worked the first time, but then Mahomes activated God mode again in the fourth quarter. And I thought what was great about that game was he throws that touchdown pass to Kelsey off the wrong foot, rolling out like he always does. And everyone's like, oh my God, he makes it look so easy. And then Derek Carr tries to make the same throw on the next possession and gets picked off. I'm like, it's not that easy, dude. Like Mahomes is just a generational talent. And like, take those 2 plays side by side and it shows you how good he is and how easy he makes things look.
But props also to Kelsey. I mean, he was more or less wide open for that too. To be able to get that open and have a complete breakdown on the defensive side to miss that. I mean, there was nobody around him for like 4 or 5 yards. So he made it.
They talked about his experience as a quarterback in the past too, and how when the plays break down, one of the reasons he's so good at that is from playing QB. Like he knows, like, okay, breaking down. Like, and when I played receiver in high school and college, that was always a thing. Like if the play breaks down, like you're on the short route, you go long. You're on the long route, you come back. If you're going left, you go right. And you just got to find your quarterback. And like the play's over once he's out of the pocket. It's a scramble. Like, and you got to find your spot. But like you said, he's amazing at just finding that soft spot in the zone. It's like, hey, and I think that's the chemistry they have too. Like Mahomes knows, like, hey, I'm rolling. Oh, I see that spot. I see where you're going to. So that's one of the few times you want to throw the ball to a spot where nobody's at because it's open and he's on his way there.
I need to give one quick nod, though. I didn't realize this, but Brent Musburger is the play-by-play guy for the Raiders. Oh, yeah. I wondered whatever happened to that guy. And I was like, oh, my God.
It zeroed right in on him.
Yeah, I know. It was great.
Wasn't he hosting like a sports betting show on radio or something not too long ago? So he's loving life in Vegas. God love him.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, if you're an 80s kid, you remember Brent Musburger. 90s kid, you remember Brent Musburger. I mean, for God's sakes, you remember him in The Waterboy. Him alongside Dan Fouts, in the Adam Sandler film. So seeing Brent Musburger again, he's a little older, a little grayer, sure, but I'm happy to see him back because he kind of just disappeared for a while. And then it's like, all right, we're going to zone in on this guy. Here he is. And I'm like, thank God, because it's nice to see him still rolling after all these years.
He's got such an iconic voice. Yeah, I remember like a year or two ago, I picked up that he was the play-by-play guy for the Raiders, and I love him. And I was when I was in the car on a Sunday, I was like, all right, what channel's the Raider game on? Because I just want to listen to him talk. Like he's just like especially with the Raiders, like and Josh Jacobs out of Alabama, like it was Jacobs' rookie year. It was last year. I was listening to a game. And he's like the rookie out of Alabama, and he just gets so amped. I was like, oh, I could listen to you all day. I could listen to you read a phone book, Brett Musburger. Like you're amazing.
He was
right. Go ahead.
Him and Kirk Herbstreit together on ESPN all those years doing the primetime college football. I mean, every time you heard that, you're looking live. I mean, that was awesome. You couldn't beat it.
You know, and it's funny because I remember when he used to do play-by-play for baseball, you know, back in the mid 90s when ABC used to have used to cover games. But it was, like I said, it's cool to see. But also, I think, I mean, you mentioned the fact that this case is Vegas. Is he a Vegas guy, you think? Or you think he's, you know, I don't think he is.
I mean, I don't think he's like in the blood of Vegas guy, but obviously that's where New York is keeping him. You know, I could always imagine him kind of like being like, this is going to sound terrible, like a Florida guy, like a California guy, joining palm trees, you know, kind of.
Exactly. You're retired, you go someplace in.
Yep.
Yeah. See, actually, I had to go in that direction because there was something specific I was going to mention, and I completely lost it in the middle of the damn sentence. So I'm like, okay, let's scramble. Let's come up with something real quick. Do you think he's a Vegas guy? Okay. So, yeah. But like I said, glad to see that guy back. Glad to see that guy is still moving along. Still don't like the fact that the team is in Vegas. I'm just never going to get over that. It's just not going to happen. So, all right. Anyway, moving on. We had talked in the beginning of the show about we're about halfway through at this point, a little NBA draft that just came and went. So I want to go through a couple of them, give me your thoughts on them. Let's start off. If you got any opinions, Timberwolves take Anthony Edwards, number 1. Rob, you want to start off?
I don't know much about Anthony Edwards, even though I work in college basketball, but it was a bizarre year. But what I was actually impressed with was the Knicks. The Knicks did something that a lot of teams traditionally, when you get those you get a lot of draft picks or teams drafting high, they go for players who come from like big name colleges. They go for the Duke stars. They go for the North Carolina kids. And the Knicks kind of did this thing where they were like, maybe we don't want a winning pedigree as much as we want talent. And like they were grabbing player of the year from different conferences. And I'm like, this is genius, because these are usually the guys who end up being the superstars that like, oh yeah, like low key, that guy was like Big Ten player of the year. That guy was Pac-10 player of the year, but he wasn't on a really good team. So no one paid attention to him. And if they could just figure out how to get rid of their owner, they'd probably be on the right path with everything else that's going for them.
One thing that's nice about, Go ahead.
Rob, you couldn't be more right, you know, with Toppin, you know, the Knicks taking him. But, you know, you were asking about Anthony Edwards. I mean, obviously, you know, when he came to the best overall pick in the NBA draft, to me, Minnesota got it right. You know, this is a kid that can just absolutely shoot. He can score. He can kind of do a little bit of everything. He'll definitely make the Timberwolves better. I think a pick to me that really stands out, not so much because on the court, I'm intrigued to see off the court, that you got LaMelo Ball now in Charlotte. How is the Ball family and Michael Jordan gonna, you know, go? You know what I mean? So, but don't get me wrong, LaMelo, you know, obviously big body at 6'7", what a point guard. So, you know, obviously he's going to help out Charlotte immensely. But that whole dynamic now, you know, can Papa Ball, you know, can he stay off to the side, or is he going to be chirping every moment if something's not going right? Michael, what's going on down there? You know,
I heard the best quote was, MJ drafted LaMelo just so he could finally get LeVar in the gym and shut him up with a one-on-one. Like, come in the first day and be like, let's go. Let's do this now, bro. Like, playtime's over. Yep. But, yeah, I always remember LaMelo, too, as the little brother. And then I saw the like, his physical stats, and I'm like, oh, the kid's 6'7", 6'8" now? Like, okay, like, he definitely grew up over the last – like, he blossomed the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think the older brother – the one who was on the Lakers that got, what was it? Not LeVar. What's the older brother who was on the Lakers? Who's on the Pelicans now? The Ball brother.
Lonzo
Ball. Yeah. Because it was LaMelo, LiAngelo, and Lonzo. Yeah. The middle one got in trouble in college and never really panned out. But Lonzo, yeah. I think LeVar kind of got the wake-up call with Lonzo. when Lonzo kind of cut ties with him, and then he got exiled to New Orleans. So I think he'll be under control. He'll have a little bit of, he might tweet something every now and then indirectly, but I think he's learned to reel himself in a little bit more.
Well, just to mention one thing about Toppin, he is also one of the things that makes that pick a great pick is he is local to New York. He's from Brooklyn.
Right.
So you get a local kid there. That's honestly, from a PR standpoint, this is a team that needs it. So I think it's a win in both sides of that court, where it's both inside and outside, because they got a guy who can play, but they also have someone local. So it's a great PR story. This is a team that has needed that for some time now. And it's nice to see. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the Knicks? The Knicks, like you said, they may be a better team if for any reason they get rid of Dolan. But I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. I see him kind of being like the Dan Snyder of basketball that way. But it's still nice to see something where you get a local kid the shot. And I'm happy for that too. I think as far as, like I said, LaMelo, I think that's a great ad. I think the Nets getting Reggie Perry, not bad. I mean, I think he's got potential there. I mean, he was big in Mississippi State, but I don't see the Nets really having done a lot with that pick. And I forget who they did the next round, but I don't know. I don't see New York basketball changing anytime soon. Although I think I'd like it to. It deserves to. It's not happening anytime soon.
I was surprised. I was kind of waiting to see what the Warriors did, especially after Clay ruptured his Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, are they going to kind of panic and try to trade down and just grab somebody? Or
nope.
But they stayed in there. And like Jared said, they took the center out of Memphis. So, they're going to need somebody else, because I just saw the stats for their win percentages, like with Clay, Steph, and Draymond. When all three play, they win 75% of their games. When one of them's out, they win like 56%. When two of them are out, they win like 30%. And without all three of them, they win like 10%. So yeah, I think they're going to be buyers in the free agency. The next couple of days they're going to fall, or they're going to trade for somebody. We'll see. But I still think what they have, they can, when everybody's healthy, they can make a run. Like they can definitely get back into the playoffs and possibly knock somebody out. I don't know if they have all the weapons to get back to the finals. If they had Clay, I would totally say yes.
Yeah. But do you think they can get back to the playoffs next year? Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. That team is very high, very high, very low. I mean, last year was a terrible year, but yeah, I think with this pick, they can probably rebound a little bit. So, all right, we got about 15 or so minutes left, give or take. Find us always on Twitter at BB Sports Den and on Facebook at Barnburner Sports Den. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this one. This is important to me personally, being an 80s kid, but Mike Tyson is climbing back into the ring again. For me, growing up, I'm a Mike Tyson fan, knowing everything about his story. I got an article on Barnburner that's going to go up called There and Back Again, A Tyson's Tale. If you get the reference of where I'm going with that, props. If you didn't, that's okay. But to see him back in the ring, I got to be honest with you, I'm scared a little bit, and not for the reasons you may think. But before I get into that, I want to get your thoughts a little bit. Do you think he can win? For God's sakes, you see his physique now, 54. I don't know if you guys know what his workout routine is, but it's insane. But Mike, first thoughts if you got him?
For me, I got to be honest with you. I remember when Tyson and Evander Holyfield, I was a little kid, obviously.
Yeah,
when that took place. Tyson, was kind of like, in my opinion, he was kind of like the last of the era of boxing, because let's be honest, boxing in a lot of it retrospect has really taken a backseat to UFC.
Yes, it has.
And you know what, too? And it's tough because, like, for me, I live in Easton, Pennsylvania. I got 3-time world heavyweight champion Larry Holmes, on the other side of town, so the Easton Assassin. So boxing is very important. At least, for me, it was always, growing up, when moving to Easton, learn about boxing. But anyways, getting to the point, I think Mike Tyson, even though that, some people say, well, is this, a publicity stunt? I get it's an 8-round exhibition, but I think he's got a chance here. And I know you're going to call me, some people may say, Mike, you're nuts. He hasn't fought. And what I think, since the late 90s, early 2000s, whenever he last fought. But I think he certainly has a chance. And I know Jones was obviously, he was as good as he was back in the 90s as well too. But to me, I think Tyson, if he can just claim a little bit of what he was prior to, back in his heyday, I give him a legitimate chance. If I say now, I think Roy Jones is probably going to win the fight, but I think Tyson, I don't think this is going to be dominated one way or the other. I could see this going the full 8 rounds and going to the judges table. I could really see that.
And each round is now 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes in length, too. Which both fighters were annoyed by.
Yeah.
They wanted a full regular 3 round. So the 2-round fight's going to be a first experience for them. But stats.
So it's basically going to be a 5-round fight, essentially, if you break it down. But yeah, I remember I watched him in the 80s and 90s, and I remember one of his last fights before he retired when he tore his ACL in the fight. Like, he was winning that fight, and I just kept thinking, I'm like, the state of the heavyweight division at that time, I'm like, he wins this fight, he can win a title. Like, he can go out there and knock, and he has knockout power for life. Like, the best reference I can give you is George Foreman, Michael Moore in the 90s, when George Foreman literally like 2-punched him in the 10th round and after losing 9 rounds, convincingly knocked him out. My friend's dad, who worked for the late great Hector Camacho, he was his personal chef, is sitting there watching the fight, and he's telling us, he goes, this guy's got knockout power for life. He goes, if he stands in front of him and he hits him, he's going to knock him out. And sure enough, Michael, and that's the great call by Jim Lampley, was like, it happened. The night before, Foreman told Lampley, he goes, at some point, he's going to stand in front of me. And that's when I got to capitalize on it. And Michael Moore stopped, and Foreman knocked him out. And Roy Jones Jr. has a history of being KO'd with like one punch. Like in The Hangover, they joke about it when Tyson knocks out Zach Galifianakis, but he can knock somebody out with one punch. And like you said, he's in great shape, man. He's just, and you kind of root for him because he's had that roller coaster career where he was up, then he was down, then he came back up, then he went back down, and now he's kind of back up with the movies and everything. And you're like, all right, I would love to see you get one last win, like ride off into the sunset, get it. If you get a KO, you get a KO, but like just show us flashes of greatness that, show this generation what the old Iron Mike was like.
Here's where I'm concerned by this, and you brought up a lot of the points that I was referring to. Growing up in the 80s, I mean, I followed that guy's career all the way through from like the beginning, really, like from the Olympics all the way up. I mean, that Spinks fight terrified me as a 12-year-old because he was 35 years old. I was terrified that the biggest competition he had was going to take him down. Of course, Tyson won that fight in 91 seconds, just like that. It was the end of it. But I've watched him degrade to basically become a mockery of what he was. I saw him obviously with, the rape conviction, the marriage that he had. I mean, a lot of the stuff, even you mentioned the Holyfield fight, that whole thing with the second fight where he bit the ear. I mean, he became a shell personality wise of what he was. And I've seen him rebound and grow into something. And I think The Hangover had a lot to do with that because it was one of the best, his small bit in that movie was one of the funniest parts of, frankly, a fantastic film in general. And I thought it got people back on his side a little bit more, and it allowed him to kind of grow and expand. I mean, that was the same year his daughter died from accidental strangulation. So it's another thing where people are seeing Mike Tyson, the person. Now, what scares me a little bit here is, and I saw this, he did an interview with Joe Rogan where he is like, I don't fight anymore. I don't work out anymore. I don't do anything like that. All I do is jog on a treadmill because when I put the gloves back on, I become a different person and I don't like the person that I was. He is somebody that has been diagnosed as bipolar and has the mood swings that are rampant with it, which is why you see so much of that. One of the tweets that are coming out, granted, a lot of it is the boxing part of it and the things that you're supposed to say, but I am really concerned that he is going to relapse just like basically an alcohol or drug addiction back to who he was previously. And the growth that he has had over the last 15 some odd years is going to drop just like that. This scares me as somebody I frankly respect for what he's been able to change about himself and grow as a person.
No, you bring up a good point. And, so for, obviously for Tyson, maybe he's learned, hopefully, Scott, that he's maybe learned from his, from his own personal struggles that, yes, like you brought up a good point. He puts on the gloves and he totally changes and he kind of gets, back into maybe his old ways. but hopefully maybe, in his own personal life that he's, whatever he's had to work on, his attitude, that maybe he'll take from whatever he's learned and say, look, okay, this is a one-time deal, but maybe he's looking at this fight too as maybe just really one last time to get out of his system, but just one final point too. If I'm not mistaken with Roy Jones, like he is, in regards to the fight, I know he was more of like a defensive fighter, and I think Rob brought up a good point that yes, if Tyson gets one good look at him, he could knock him out, which kind of makes me worry because with defensive fighters, sometimes they'll jab, I could see some of that in Tyson. If he ends up losing his cool a little bit, maybe goes back into it. Okay, maybe he connects with him, knocks him out. But that's why, to me, I think this fight has a chance to actually be exciting. Yes, we can relive the yesteryears of both of these great fighters, but both have, as Rocky Balboa said in Rocky Balboa, I still got some stuff in the basement.
Yeah,
he's got to get some of that stuff out of his basement.
Every fighter has one great fight left in him. That was the line from Jim Lampley in that movie.
Yep.
So,
Tyson's got that. I mean, said if he can turn back the clock, oh man, like his style is like no one else's. When he's, it's even as a defensive fighter, like it's hard to get away from him, like to jab and get away. Like Lennox Lewis did it successfully because he had the size and the length to keep him at bay. But if Mike can get inside on you and start to like stalk you like a lion, oh, it's going to be a long 8-minute rounds for Roy. Like he's going to have some problems to deal with.
Now in this case, I don't know if you know what his workout routine is, and this is a daily routine. This does not account, the time in the ring. This does not include the bike work, studying tape, and everything like that. He does 500 rep bench dips a day, 500 push-ups a day, 500 shrugs a day, 1,000 sit-ups, and 1,000 squats. It's pretty much all calisthenics for this man. Now I don't know about you, but I cannot do 500 push-ups a day. I don't know. Maybe you can. I mean, the most I've ever done was like 360. But that's one single day, and I need like 4 days the rest after that. This is a daily thing that he's been doing. What his routine usually was he would get up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, run for 5 miles, go back to the house, go to sleep until 10 o'clock, and then eat something, and then start his workout day. So all of this stuff, this is just the calisthenics part. This is not the time in the ring. This is not studying. This is not the exercise bike, the 30 minutes he used to do at the end of the night. This is just how he got into the unbridled, shredded shape that he is in at 54 years old, to make himself look pretty much like he just did. Again, I'm a little edgy because I don't want to see this guy as a person relapse, and it's so easy, I think, when you become addicted to that kind of lifestyle, that kind of mentality, the violence, the anger, the psychological part of it, to slip back into that. It's so much harder to not do that. And maybe I'm overthinking about it. Like I said, being somebody who grew up a fan of that guy way back in the early 80s, but I don't want to see that kind of thing happen to somebody who at this point suddenly went to a guy that has a cartoon show. I've started watching Mike Tyson's Mysteries on Adult Swim. I got it on. I signed up for Hulu. I started watching it. The fact that he actually voices his own character on that, I think is just absolutely hilarious. But like I said, I like where he's going with it, and I don't want to see anything happen to that guy. But I do think right now, I think Tyson is going to win this fight. He is technically a really favorite at the moment, but it's going to be interesting to see. Pay-per-view is currently $50 on this. Here in the US. In I think UK, I think it's 20 pounds. So, but I guess that works out to be like 25 or $30. But yeah, it's a pay-per-view match, $49.95, and they're estimating about 10 o'clock.
As long as I hope it's a good fight. I think it'll be a good fight. It'll be entertaining, and hopefully, nobody gets hurt. Like that's obviously, you have guys who haven't been in the ring, and it's kind of like getting back on the field after taking 2 years off. You don't really want to just run into it, but. Yeah, I think it could be a good fight. Like you're talking about the workout routine, it sounds a lot like the old Herschel Walker workout. Like Herschel Walker had a similar workout where he's like, I don't lift weights. He's like, I just do push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, whatever. Like he never really lifted a lot of weights if he didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, you see players did it. I mean, you used to hear about Randy Rosarena, 500 push-ups a day, put on 15 pounds during when he had COVID. But looking over Tyson's record on this, he lost 3 out of his last 4 fights. And that's a tough way to go out. He was 49-3, ended at 50-6. And I think he wants the chance to be able to come back and be like, you know what? I want to go back in the win column. And I can respect that part of it. Like I said, I'm just nervous to see what he ends up doing with it. But yeah, I was actually, ironically enough, I was watching some of his videos last night, the Burbeck knockout, the Spinks knockout, and that dude, wow. There's a reason why he took out Little Mac in one punch in Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Oh yeah, I was raised on that one too. I'm embarrassed to say that when I got that for Christmas morning in 1987, I lost to Glass Joe twice before I finally beat him. This will be mentioned in my article too. I've got that coming up. But yeah, so we got about 4 minutes left at this point. As always, like I said, find us on Facebook at Barn Burner Sports Den and on Twitter at BB Sports Den. Want to get your final thoughts on basically anything we've covered, anything we haven't covered. Just give me your thoughts. Mike, start off with you, man.
No, I'm going to try to hope to catch the pay-per-view. It'll be a lot of fun. I would think, obviously, just kind of live some stuff from yesteryears. And, what I think, just want to kind of revisit with the NBA draft, for the Knicks, just as a fan, I'm hoping that this is the start of some things for them to build a foundation to where they hopefully can be and become a competitive organization again, because, for sports in the New York/New Jersey area, even though that the Yankees and the Mets are strong in baseball, the Giants and the Jets are finding their way right now. We're trying to find their way. The hockey scene is, it's been what it is. But at the end of the day, when the city of New York is rocking, it's when the New York Knicks are playing good basketball. So I think it would be great for the NBA if the Knicks can get back to being competitive. But in the meantime, it's still Brooklyn's town. But right now, fun transition, between the NFL and then, getting back into some of the indoor sports with the NBA and the NHL. So,
yeah. Right now the Knicks are actually the most valuable franchise in sports in the NBA, despite the records that they've been having for the years. So yeah, you're definitely on point on that. I agree with that. Rob, any final thoughts from you, sir?
No, at this point, I'm wondering if the Jets are ever going to win a game. I'm going to make a bold prediction. This is going to sound crazy. They're going to get their first win against Cleveland. They're going to spoil Cleveland's playoff chances or something. That's the game. It's going to be the most unpredictable, the game you least expect them to win. Or Miami, or they're going to beat Miami in Tua, because Tua time is already kind of run out.
They're going to beat Miami because you root for Miami and because you need Miami to win pretty much every game down the stretch.
Well, they got Miami this week, so yeah, that could be.
Yeah, but I'm saying in this particular case, they're going to do that pretty much just to spite you.
Yeah. No, but I said after because they officially were eliminated from playoff contention, and I said now is when, as a Miami fan who had to deal with Gase for 3 or 4 years, this is when Gase decides to crank it up and turn the dial all the way to the right. And now I'm gonna coach to save my job, and he's gonna coach them right out of a top 5 pick, and they're gonna win a couple of games, and they're gonna be like, now what do we do? Now we got to settle for somebody in the middle of the top 10 that we really don't need, when we could have gone higher and gotten a QB or gotten a top lineman or something. So yeah, I think it'll either be Miami or Cleveland, or knowing Gase, if Darnold comes back, they win a couple games and he plays them right out of a top 5. He coaches them right out of a top 5 pick.
Well, back to the Herm Edwards line. You play to win the game.
Yeah.
So, all right. That is going to do it for us. Thanks as always for tuning in. The show can be heard on the Barn Burner Radio Network on 122 different platforms and 4 different devices for the Barn Burner, the ZINGOTV app. For me, my name is Scott Schertzen. Thanks as always for tuning in. Alongside me, as always, was my far better co-host, Mr. Rob Stats. Thank you, sir. And my far better guest co-host, I should say, Mr. Michael Ventola. How can we find you, sir?
You can follow me on Twitter at Venting Daily. So love to tweet back and forth. So,
and yes, root for the Iron Pigs too. So,
yep, exactly.
So that's going to do it for us. Thanks as always for tuning in. And as always, thank you and be great and have a Thanksgiving.